You know how it is this time of year. Just when it feels like things are starting to quiet down, a rumor comes out that gets everyone talking again. And this one is the kind of story that can completely change the conversation around the team. We're talking about a move that could take the defense from good to absolutely terrifying and instantly put the team in the spotlight across the entire league. Now, nothing is official, but there are enough signs out there to make this worth paying attention to. If things start moving in this direction, it could become one of the biggest stories of the off-season. And trust me, if you're a fan dreaming about this team making a serious run, this is the type of situation you'll want to keep a close eye on. Before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know. Are you ready to see the monsters of the Midway back in full force? Bear down. The possibility of a blockbuster move involving MYLES GARRETT is suddenly back in the spotlight. And for Chicago Bears fans, that is a development impossible to ignore. A recent discussion surrounding the Cleveland Browns' future has reopened questions that many believed were settled months ago. The key point is simple. There are growing signs that Cleveland could eventually consider moving one of the greatest defensive players of his generation, and the Bears have once again been mentioned as a team that makes sense in that conversation. What makes this situation so fascinating is that it is not based on pure speculation. Attention has been drawn to the decision to delay the execution of Garrett's massive option bonus, a move that would make a future trade significantly easier to execute. According to the information discussed in the source material, this adjustment created additional flexibility for Cleveland and opened a pathway that previously would have been extremely difficult to navigate. For a player who requested a trade in the past, many observers believe that delaying that payment only makes sense if there is at least some possibility of movement down the road. The Bears entering the discussion should not surprise anyone. Chicago has spent years searching for ways to consistently improve its pass rush. While the roster has undergone major changes and improvements, generating pressure off the edge remains one of the most important priorities for a team trying to take the next step. The report highlights that Chicago previously showed interest in elite pass rushers, including inquiries involving Garrett and other star defenders. That history matters because it demonstrates that the front office has already explored aggressive solutions to address the position. From Cleveland's perspective, the debate revolves around timing. Garrett remains an elite player, but he is now 30 years old. The argument being made is that if the Browns are truly focused on building around younger talent and future draft classes, then the value of trading Garrett may never be higher than it is right now. Waiting another year introduces risk. Injuries can happen, production can decline, market value can shift. Teams around the league understand that reality, and that is why discussions like this continue to gain momentum. For Chicago, the appeal is obvious. Garrett is not simply a good player. He is a game-changing force capable of altering offensive game plans every single week. The source describes him as one of the greatest defensive players of all time, and his resume certainly supports that conversation. Even at 30 years old, he remains one of the NFL's most feared pass rushers, combining production, durability, and consistency at an extraordinary level. Imagine what his arrival would mean for the Bears' defense. Opposing offenses would no longer be able to focus all of their attention on one edge rusher. The entire defensive front would benefit. Veterans would see more favorable matchups. Younger players would have opportunities to develop without carrying the burden of being the primary pass-rushing threat. One superstar addition could elevate the performance of multiple positions across the defense. Of course, acquiring a player of Garrett's caliber would require a significant investment. Draft picks would almost certainly be involved, and Cleveland would likely demand a substantial package in return. That is where the debate becomes complicated. How much is too much? At what point does the cost outweigh the reward? Those are questions every front office must answer when a generational talent becomes available. Still, there is no denying the excitement surrounding the possibility. The Bears appear to be building towards something bigger. Expectations are rising. Confidence in the direction of the franchise is growing. Adding a player capable of transforming an entire defense could accelerate that process dramatically and instantly place Chicago among the most dangerous teams in the league. With June approaching and more attention being placed on Garrett's situation, this story feels far from over. Every development, every contract detail, and every appearance or absence will be watched closely by fans around the NFL. And if Cleveland eventually decides to listen to offers, the Bears could find themselves right in the middle of one of the biggest trade conversations of the offseason. If the Browns truly make Myles Garrett available, do you believe the Bears should make an aggressive trade offer to bring him to Chicago? The biggest reason this story refuses to disappear is because of where the Chicago Bears currently are as a franchise. This is no longer a rebuilding team searching for an identity. The organization has invested heavily in building around Caleb Williams, and the expectation is no longer about future potential. The expectation is to compete. When a team reaches that stage, conversations change. Instead of discussing developmental prospects and long-term projects, the focus shifts toward acquiring proven stars who can help win meaningful games immediately. That is why the possibility of Myles Garrett becoming available creates so much intrigue around Chicago. The argument for making a move becomes even stronger when looking at the current state of the defense. While there is talent throughout the roster, every elite defense usually has that one-player offense's fear before the ball is even snapped. Garrett is exactly that type of player. He is the kind of defender who forces offensive coordinators to completely redesign protection schemes. Double teams become mandatory. Tight ends stay in to block. Running backs are asked to help in protection. All of those adjustments create opportunities for everyone else on the field. One of the most impressive aspects of Garrett's career has been his durability. Despite playing one of the most physically demanding positions in football, he has remained remarkably available throughout his career. The source highlights that most of the games he missed came early in his NFL journey, while in recent years he has consistently been on the field, producing at an elite level. That reliability only increases his value, because teams are not just paying for talent. They are paying for the confidence that talent will be available when it matters most. His resume speaks for itself. Multiple first-team All-Pro selections, Defensive Player of the Year recognition, and production that places him among the elite pass rushers the league has ever seen. Players with those credentials rarely become available. In fact, most franchises spend decades hoping to draft someone with even a fraction of that impact. When a player of Garrett's caliber enters trade discussions, every contender has to at least explore the possibility. That is why teams such as Chicago continue to be connected to rumors like this. The Bears understand that championship windows do not stay open forever. If Caleb Williams develops into the superstar many believe he can become, then maximizing those years becomes the top priority. History has shown that teams willing to make bold moves often separate themselves from the pack. The challenge is determining whether the cost aligns with the reward. There is also an emotional side to this discussion that Bears fans understand better than most. Chicago has always embraced dominant defensive football. Some of the most celebrated eras in franchise history were built around defenses that intimidated opponents every week. The thought of adding a player capable of reviving that reputation naturally generates excitement throughout the fan base. The image of Garrett wearing navy and orange, attacking quarterbacks at Soldier Field, is enough to capture the imagination of any Bears supporter. At the same time, patience will be required. A trade cannot happen unless Cleveland decides that moving Garrett is truly in the organization's best interest. Publicly, the Browns have continued to express confidence in keeping him. However, as the source points out, several details surrounding his contract situation continue to raise questions. Those questions are unlikely to disappear anytime soon, especially if additional signs emerge during minicamps and training camp activities. As the off-season progresses, this could become one of the NFL's most closely watched storylines. Every report, every quote, and every roster decision will be analyzed. If momentum begins to build toward a potential trade, the Bears are expected to remain one of the teams worth monitoring. Whether anything ultimately happens remains unknown, but the connection is strong enough that fans should continue paying attention. And if Chicago ever gets the opportunity to land a player who can instantly transform the defense and potentially elevate the team into the Super Bowl conversation, it is hard to imagine the front office not seriously considering every possible option. The idea alone is enough to keep this conversation alive throughout the summer. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and stay tuned for more Chicago Bears coverage. And don't forget to click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because the latest Bears developments and breaking news are the kind of updates you'll want to follow closely. Bear down.